Good afternoon or morning, depending where you are. Let me officially welcome you on this webinar of MyQ, in which we will focus on the MDC, the application client we have prepared for your customers. Just for your information, my name is Michael Demel, and I'm a pre-sales manager and a trainer, and I will guide you through this webinar. As always, we will first start with the agenda of today's webinar. You already got the simplified agenda in the invitation, so you probably know what to expect, but it doesn't hurt if we will show it here. First, we will start with some MyQ news, a very brief introduction of the most important things that were added to the system or its components in the either following days or those days that were before this webinar. So there are three important topics: the new embedded terminals that are now available, the new MyQ X subscription licensing, and there's a little sneak peek of the beta release of the MyQ X version 10. After this brief introduction of these news, we will then jump into the main topic, when I will just explain all the different options and modes the MyQ X Desktop Client offers to you and your customers. As always, the last part of the webinar will be a short Q&A session, so if you will have any question to any topic I will mention today, do not hesitate to contact us through the little icon, which probably is in the top right corner of your screen. Through that, just send us the question, and at the end of the webinar, I will try to explain everything and answer as much questions as possible. If potentially your question will not be answered, do not worry. We will definitely answer all the questions after the webinar. But now, let's not waste our time and start with the actual important thing to think why you are here, and those are the MyQ news. So like I said, there are three important things you should know about our MyQ X. And we will start with the most important thing, the part where the solution interacts with the end user, and that's the embedded terminal. So I just would like to highlight here three recent releases. The first one, which you've probably expected, is the Canon Phase 2 RC version, which is now available in our partner portal. What we have done, comparing to the previous version, is that we have added additional features like project accounting, the quota, credit, or the ID card registration. Of course, additional phase can be expected as the terminal will be developed. Another recent addition to our portfolio is then the Epson. Epson now is in phase 3, which means that the device supports all the features that its platform allows us to implement into the embedded terminal. So the Epson, again, an RC version, is now available and can be used for testing at your customers and later also in the real installation. Last but not least, there's one more addition to the portfolio, and that's a long-expected Kyocera embedded terminal, which is also available. Basically, what we are talking here now is the client, which is built on the new architecture, and the actual version, which you can see here, is the one that is recommended to be used with your 8.2 server. Actually, it will not work with any older one. So if you are now using the 8.2 server, I would definitely recommend you to upgrade to this version and use it with your system. So those were about the embedded. Another really important topic is the subscription licensing. Licensing that was done basically based on the feedback from the field, where some of you requested an option to be able to, limit the license per project, or to make it, more modular, to be able to change the amount of devices used by the system on different sites based on the need of the customer. And that's exactly what you can expect when we are talking about the new subscription licensing. The very same way as the standard licensing, you can control it using the project control in the partner portal of MyQ. Through there, you can just change whatever you need. You can order new licenses. You can delete them, change them as you need, and it will automatically communicate through the licensing server with your installation. So basically, the change could be almost instant. When it comes to that, at this moment, we're offering two types of invoices and also two types of subscription, and that's the monthly one or the one that will be invoiced yearly. It's up to you which one you will use. And of course, later you can change it at the end of the period. There's also think of the renewal, and it's up to you again to reflect the need of your customer if you will select the automatic or the manual renewal of the license. If you use the first one, the system logically will automatically renew it based on your last selection at the moment the installation is about to end. Basically, the license is about to expire. And don't worry, the software assurance is included, of course, in this one. So you got support, you've got everything, with the advantage that you can now change the amount of devices used in the installation, or you can limit it per specific period. So for example, if there is a project for 3 years, you will just put there a license, which is exactly for that time. Now, the last one from our news is, like I've mentioned before, a little sneak peek into the MyQ X version 10 beta version, which is now available on the partner portal for selected partners. Now, what is new in this version? Now, the biggest change, which was done as part of MyQ 10, is that we've changed the graphic here. Now, to improve the experience of the admin and the user, we have completely changed the graphics. So now it's using a vector graphic. So everything is looking smooth, even on a very large displays. Another thing is, and it's really important, that none of the menus, none of the options which are in the system were changed, renamed, or reorganized. So if you will upgrade to this version, you definitely do not have to learn too many different things. You will not be struggling when looking for options you were used to have in different locations. Everything is as it was, just with much better graphics. And there's also one more really important thing. There is a modify the special mode for people with special needs. So the web accessibility has also been enhanced as part of this update. Now, there's actually one last thing I would like to mention about the new MyQ 10, and that's my favorite, the support of the dark mode. So for those of you who prefer to have everything in a dark mode, as I do, you can just, as you can see here, easily switch your MyQ into dark mode as well and use it that way. So let me just summarize what are the changes and news in this system. What we've done, we've completely redesigned the UI to use vector graphics while keeping the locations and options at the same place. So there is no need to, starting from scratch and learning where to find what. We have enhanced the accessibility mode and added a few more important things to make it even better for those who need it. There is a support of the dark mode, and as you've probably guessed, this new change is now used for both the print server and of course for the central server as well. And then one thing, what stays? The 8.2, the currently used version at most of our installations, still stays as the long-term supported. So you do not have to worry about upgrading your projects right now. We definitely recommend you to stay on 8.2 because this is our LTS. Of course, new features might be added to the new edition, but definitely 8.2 is still managed, fully supported, and is definitely intended for the long-term projects. And that's pretty much everything from the news. Just one thing I wanted to highlight here, and that's if you would like to learn more, please visit our training center programs and check the videos there. You can find them in the partners.myqsolution.com under the option training center. Or if you would like to, get the personalized demonstration of the features or all these things I spoke about, please contact us on pre-sales at myq-solution.com and, reserve your demonstration or personal installation. So that were the MyQ news. And now let's focus on the main topic of today, and that will be the MyQ X desktop client. Like I said, a client which is intended for user station. But let's not go ahead, and first I will explain what this application is about and what are the options this application offers you and how your customers can benefit from them. So what is the MyQ X Desktop Client? Basically, it's an app, like I said, an application installed on your user's computer. I know many people think that the clients installed on user station are not something they would like to have in their company, but maybe after this presentation, they will change their mind after seeing what the client can actually do. So what it is, like I said, it's a client for MS Windows user station. Now, for those of you who have access to a partner portal, you've probably noticed that there is another application with a similar name, but intended for the macOS. Now, this is basically a smaller brother of this client, which is not really having all the features of this one, so we will not mention it here. If you will be interested in that client, again, like it was on one of the previous slides, please do not hesitate to contact us directly, and we will just show you what this client is capable of. Let's now focus on the one for MS Windows. Logically, it's the MSI package that could be installed easily. When it comes to communication, it uses the MyQ REST API version 2, and of course, the whole communication is secured using the HTTPS and LPR over TLS protocols for communication and a job transfer. There are also a few ports you need. It uses the standard TCP communication for the communicating with a server. And of course, there is a heartbeat through the UDP, which is needed only for the heartbeat between the client and the server. When it comes to installation of this client, there are two options. You can either do it manually, or you can use a silent installation through the domain policy. Also, for the manual installation, the MSI package can be modified using the parameters to actually define what you need, and then the installation is really simple. So you will just get the exact client options you need at your installation. When it comes to supported versions of the system, the MyQ Desktop Client is intended for version 8.2 and higher. And what it offers are multiple different modes, from a secured print to special print modes and some failover solutions. But we'll speak about all these in a couple of minutes. Now, as you've probably guessed, especially those of you that are with us for some time, the MDC is basically a successor of the family of the Easy Job Manager, Smart Print Services, or Smart Job Manager clients. Now, it's definitely not intended to be used with those. It's really their successor because it takes all their advantages and just replaces them. So if you are using your version 8.2, MyQ X Desktop Client is the right option for you. Now, when it comes to the offered features, like I said before, it contains all the things of the previous clients. So the client spooling, fallback print, project selection, you name it, it's there. Of course, I will explain all of these in details as we will go on, including the things, how those features are changed in this client, comparing them to the previous versions. I mean the SPS, SJM, and all these old ones. Important thing, how the actual client differs from its predecessors are three major changes. The first one is the integration of the job parser. So you can activate the parser for example, client spooling or local print monitoring to analyze the print job and get all the details you need for your reporting. So we're no longer relying, for example, for the local print monitoring on the print spooler, but instead of that, the actual analysis of the print job is done by the application. The application also synchronizes its data and statuses from the server. So it will definitely know what's the status of your credit, quota, what are your print rules. So that way, for example, you don't want the user to print locally in color, you can simply deny it using this client. And the last thing is that can actually enforce all these things synchronized from the server. So it knows your print job policies, it knows the status of the credit, quota, projects, and even price lists. But about that on the following slides. So first one, the one on which everything starts, basically the cornerstone of the application is the secured print. Because it's not only about secured print, but one more feature, as you've probably guessed, it's about the synchronization with the server. Initially, it was designed to replace the option where you need to print securely, but you cannot use the IPPS. So instead of that, it establishes secured communication with the server and sends the job through that channel. At the same time, which is really important for the other options which we have there, the system automatically synchronizes its data, as you will see on the following slides. So that will be the basic communication. The secure job transfer is an optional part, while the server data synchronization is really important for all the other modes I will go through in a couple of minutes. So the next one and the next big feature of the system, which is the client spooling, a solution designed for someone who wants to print on a distant location. So it can be printing on some special office which is not available at the main site. It could be printing using the MyQ installation in the private cloud. All these can be covered by client spooling. And let me just explain why. So here we've got a standard office of MyQ. Everyone is printing through the server. All the jobs are controlled through that server and going through its repository, the standard printing. But at the same time, there could be an office, a distant one, where the connection is not the fastest one, and we do not want to have any additional hardware than the computer and the device. So no server on that location. Problem of such location, if we will be printing to the main site, might be that the already slow line will be overloaded by large print jobs sent from the client to the server and back to device. So the client spooling solves exactly this situation, because if it's there, it communicates with your server. Like I said, it establishes the communication and updates its database. The server also communicates with the device. And now the magic happens, because if the user would like to print, and let's say, for example, this is a graphical studio printing a large print job, which could be megabytes or even more, file which we definitely do not want to send to the server, but we would like to control it. So instead of sending it to the server, it goes to the client using a setting of the print port for localhost, but with definition of the print queue from the server. It goes there, gets stored locally, but thanks to the analysis of the client using the parser, we know everything about the print job. So we can create a metadata file which will contain the host name of your client, job details, as for example, how many pages are there, what kind of pages, and who's the owner. This file, unlike the job, this file is really small, so if it goes to the server, it's not a big deal, while the job at the same time stays on your client. And when the user comes to the machine, as you've probably guessed, the metadata file is sent to your device, and the device then knows with which client to communicate, downloads the job, and releases it securely. So basically, through this, you've got the many things. You've reduced the amount of data transferred between the main central server and the print environment. You've got a secured print, and thanks to the parsing, which is now done on the application, you've got a full job accounting. Those of you that were using the SPS before probably remember that when that one was used with the client spooling, the server didn't know what the job is about, how many pages are there, if those are color or black and white, so no rule enforcement could really be applied. While in this case, this is no longer a limitation. Now, when it comes to application examples, let me just mention a few of those. The one which we have used as the on the initial slide is pretty obvious. Central location and one, let's say, graphical studio producing large print files that should not leave the local network. And instead of that, only the metadata files are sent through the server and the jobs are released. Like I said, it could be a central location, or instead of that, the server could be in a private cloud in the MS Azure, and only the metadata are going through the server, so it has full reporting, but we do not have to really send the print job into the cloud and back. Another option, which might not be that obvious, but is also really handy, can be that we've got a company which has multiple locations. All locations, on the other hand, are connected to one print server because, the connection is strong enough, fast enough, so we can just control them through one server. But we've got one guy, for example, someone who takes care of the location, some operator or someone who is in charge, who needs to travel among these sites. And in such a case, the guy does definitely do not want to, do anything special when he is on a different location. Every time he or she prints, the job stays on the server, which in this case, as the computer of the user, while metadata are sent to the server. And I can simply move to another location and just release the job from my computer so it stays on that location because I've brought it in my computer. And now for the practical part. So let me just show you how that all looks from the user perspective. And I just have to warn you because this one will be a really boring one. Now, what you can see here is a step the user does not have to do. What I would like to show you is now I'm using single sign-on on the client, so I'm just now logged in. And then I will send the file for printing. As you've probably expected, that's all, folks, like the Porky the Pig would say, because we don't want to annoy the user with anything else, anything that he would normally do to print the file. Everything is now running in the background, and the user is not annoyed by additional dialogues or additional options. So he can just come to the machine, authenticate using the standard way, and release the print job. This feature MyQ Desktop Client offers you is the Fallback Print, an option that should serve as a failover method for those that do not have the server failover or just something goes wrong. So let me just show you what is it about. Normally, when it comes to printing through MyQ, everything goes through your print server. Also, the print server establishes connection with all your clients installed on the devices. So it's a big issue if such server goes down, even for a short maintenance. Of course, in the big organizations, probably you already have a failover solution for the server, so this would not be a big deal. But for small companies, where this solution simply will not be affordable, we can use this Fallback Print to do exactly the same, to make sure the user can print while I'll need to maintain the server. So when the server goes down through the maintenance, the communication would not go through, but there comes the client that establishes the connection with the device, and thanks to the metadata from the server, it can still print, as you will see on following slides. Starting first with the most basic option, which relies on one predefined machine. It's an option which is practical, but on the other hand has its also limitations, which are then removed by other options of the client. So it's up to you which one of those you would like to use. This one will fit for a company that has, I don't know, 1 or 2 machines, so definitely not a big environment. In such a case, the client that is installed on your computer automatically gets all the print jobs. And in a standard way, like I said before, everything goes through the server and gets accounted by the embedded and the server. Once the server is down, this option is not possible, and it goes through the Fallback Print. The application will first check if the server is available, and if it's not, it will stop trying that, and instead of that, release the file on the machine. Simple as that. Another option, which is more practical for large installations when you've got hundreds of devices, is this one, the last 5 used devices. As you've probably guessed from the name, the system automatically analyzes the daily work of the user to be able to create a list of most used devices by that user. And that list is, of course, synchronized with your client when you're working there. So then, when the maintenance is done on the server, the user can just simply select from the list of these devices which is available in the application. The application not only allows you to select which device you would like to use, but more important, it also checks if the device is available. So as you can see, the Samsung here is not on the network. So actually, instead of 5, I can only select from 4 devices. And the last option, which is there, it works almost similar, but instead of selecting from the list, I can just provide here the IP or host name of the device. A solution which can, of course, do the same thing like the others, but is more intended for your admin, where the admin can simply send it to one machine, because a common user would actually not use this one. So the most common one, I think, will be the last 5 used devices. And that way, again, it comes to the machine, and we've got the job. Now, there's one more thing, and that's really important, and that's about the accounting. How the job can be accounted if you are using this offline mode when the server is not there, and on the device, the embedded is not really working because it doesn't have the information from the already mentioned server. There are actually 2 ways how the accounting can be done in this situation. The first one is here with the device pooling. So if you've got a device that supports the device pooling feature, every time you do the fallback print, it actually goes to a local storage on the device using the special ports which you can define in the MyQ Desktop Client, and that way get a full accounting, so the job gets printed based on the queue type, which is defined by the port. And that way, when you're there, you can securely release it. And when the server goes up, you get the detailed accounting. But that's, like I said, is a solution only for selected devices where the device pooling is supported. Now, this is a feature which we will not go into details. That's not actually related to the MDC, just can be used with it. If you will be interested in a device pooling, do not hesitate to contact us or wait for another webinar when we will speak about that one. The other option of how we can account, and actually it could be the more important one because it covers not only devices with the embedded terminal, but also your desktop units, is the accounting through the MDC. Now, we've mentioned that every job gets parsed, and that's also the situation here. So when it comes to the offline mode, every new job that comes to the client gets parsed, analyzed, so we know its details, and then when it's released to the machine, the application will automatically use that information and report it to the server when this one is back online. So that way we've got a detailed accounting, even in a situation where the server is down, and you can use it even on a small desktop unit. And now for the practical demonstration, there's just one. I will not show all of those, but actually the most important one, which is the last used devices. Now in this case, I'm just printing in the offline mode, which you can clearly see the server is down, it's under the maintenance. Oh, I need to print something and I cannot wait for it, so let's use the client. Now, because this is a real situation, it takes a bit more time because it's trying to check the communication with the server. Now, as you can see, the client popped up and showed me 3 devices, of which only 2 are available. Now, little discrepancy, right? Now, like I said, the system remembers up to 5 machines, but that depends if you've used those machines. So it actually gives you a list of only those machines you have actually used in the last couple of days. So that's why only 3 machines were used here, because I've not used more than those. And as you can see from the message that appeared on the screen, the job was actually failed to be sent to the MyQ server, and instead of that, it used the fallback print to the device you selected. Right, another option which we have here, the local print monitoring of devices connected directly to your machine. So, starting here with the example, pretty common one, at least from my experience. That could be a hospital where each doctor has a small machine on the desk, and probably they will not give it up Simply, we need to know what's happening on those machines. We need to know the amount of print going through these machines. So we can just simply use the client to collect all the data for us. And now how it works in the MyQ X Desktop Client. So the local print monitoring before the MDC was working the way that whatever you have sent, the client automatically checked the queue of the system, and from the spooler and the queue, it just got the information about the owner and number of pages, which somehow was sufficient in the past, but definitely it's not enough these days. So yeah, you could get reports on that, but it will not be enough today. And for that very reason, the parser, which is now part of the application, can actually solve that and give you much more details about every job going through that USB connection of yours. So yeah, it still goes through the queue, but we are passing the job, so we get much more details about it. Not that it's only 2 pages, but we know it's 2 pages, A4 in color, and who's the owner, and if it was sent. And that way, whatever is released on your USB connected device now comes with much more details than it was before the MyQ Desktop Client. That's not actually all, because there's one more level of that, the print rules. The client, like I said before at the beginning, synchronizes its database or its memory with the server. So that way we know what print rules are there in place. What is the status of your quota or your credit? So in that case, you are not allowed to print in color, for example. We can do something about it because we have analyzed the job locally. So in such a case, and I will demonstrate it here on a quota, if I send the job, it gets parsed, and at the same time, it gets paused in the print queue. The communication from the server shows us that the quota of this user has been depleted for this period, and that way printing is blocked. And of course, the client knows that, so what it does, it will delete the paused job from the print queue, and that way the job will never actually reach your device. So it allows you to enforce print rules also on the machines that are connected only through the USB cable. And when I'm talking about the print rules, it could be something from the, I don't know, I'm not allowed to print in color to quota, credit, and there's also option to select projects for these devices, as you will see as we will go on. And for the practical demo, of course. When it comes to the demonstration, I've just selected the very same scenario as I spoke about. So my user has a quota in place, and that one is depleted. So what you will see, if I'll click on the client, I don't have to do, but I can, because here I can also check what is the status of my quota. And as you can see, it's been depleted for this period, but if I will try to print, it will not really happen. Simply, the client knows that I'm not allowed to print, so even on these USB connected device, it gets deleted from the print queue, as you can see also from this message. All right, that's been this one. Another one that will be about the additional cost centers. Sometimes you need to select or assign a project for every printout that is going through your system. So for example, if it's a construction site, or if we are talking about the lawyer company, where they need to really distinguish between different cases and how they need to know how much each case cost them on the printing, they can do it by selecting a project. And that's actually this feature. Now, if you go through the server and on the device, you can easily select these projects directly on the embedded screen, or you can do it in the UI of the server. But on the locally connected device, it's not that easy. And that's actually done through the client, because if you will be printing directly, so it's for direct printing or for the local print monitoring, simply, as you've guessed, you can select it directly in the application, because before the job is sent, the client pops up and asks you to select the project and that way assign the cost of the printout to your simple job. And pretty obvious, it works in both online and offline modes of the server, so you do not have to really worry about a situation where the server goes down, because the application remembers who you are and what are your limits, preferences, and in this case, cost centers and projects. So that way you can assign them even in this mode. But let's speak about that on the next part, when I will show all the offline rules and options. In this one, I just would like to show how it works. So starting first with here, as you can see, I'm already using a single sign-on from my system, so I don't have to log in or anything. And if I print, before the file is released, the application will pop up and let me select the project. So you can see how many pages, what type of document it is, and now I'm selecting a project. The very same way, like on the embedded terminal, I can here mark some projects as my favorite, or I can use the search bar to find the project I need, provided that list was larger than just the one I had here in this demonstration. I'm sorry, little glitch here. All right, so next topic. And we've been going through it. I've actually mentioned this topic multiple times throughout my presentation, and those are the offline print rules. Basically, everything that gets synchronized with the app can be applied in the offline mode. Now, as we are here, before the MDC, if something like that happened and you, for example, use the fallback printing, whatever was printed, yeah, the user got the printout, that was good, but the print rules were completely ignored. So that way they could print even if the quota was depleted. If they could print even if, I don't know, they were not allowed to print in color. But all these things are now controlled by the MDC. There are actually 3 modes which you can activate for the offline situation. That could be a mode that always prints everything you send. Basically, it will behave like the application before the MyQ X Desktop Client. I will skip one because there is an option not to print in an offline mode at all. So you can just make sure that if the server is undergoing a maintenance, the user will not be able to print directly at all because it will just stop all the printouts. But the one that really interests us today is the second option, not to print if it doesn't comply with rules. In such a case, the client does its trick, because when the server was online, it actually synchronized all the data we've mentioned before. So the print job policies, quotas, credit, price lists, project lists, and because we're using the fallback print, also the last used devices. The whole set is now available locally on your client. And then when the server goes down, we can simply check those rules and apply them. So first, sending a print job. The manifest gets checked, and we know that the print rules are okay. You can now select projects, or it goes directly to the machine. On the other hand, and that's really obvious, is that if you are not complying with rules or your quota or something is reached, simply you're not allowed to print, the rules are broken, the job gets deleted directly on the client. And that's it. So let's look at the practical part, when I will actually show you 2 different situations. First one, as the standard one. So we were communicating with the server, everything is fine, we've got the data. As you can see, server is offline. So when I'm printing, I will just now wait till everything goes through. But there's one limitation, that I'm not allowed to print in color. So as you can see, printing in color is not allowed. So the job, I can wait for the server to come online, try it again, and the server will just change my job into black and white. Or like here in this example, I will delete the file completely because I don't want it here, and I can just send it in the black and white. That's a situation where the data are cached. But that could be a situation where, for example, the user started printing after the server went down. So basically the cache in the application could not be created, could not get the manifest from the server. Technically, it's possible because he just connected that too late and the application was not communicating with the server before. And in such situation, if the server is down and I will now print, yeah, as you probably guessed, it will not go through, and I've got the same situation to wait till the server goes back online or delete the job because I'm simply not allowed, because the system does not have the data for your credit, quota, project, or print rules. So like I said, I can try again when the server goes back online, or I have to delete it and wait till everything is again working. As you can see, multiple options can be applied. I can be really strict with the rules, or I can just let everyone do what they want. It depends on the amount of control we would like to apply in our organization. Another thing which does not really, is not really related to the previous options, but could be really handy, and that is a print server detection. How to describe it? Ideally on the real situation. So let's say again, we've got a big company with different sites with different print servers, and we've got a user that travels among these sites. Logically, to make it easy, we can use a job roaming, means that I'm printing always to the home server and it gets synchronized with the others. But it might not be really practical, especially when I'm printing large files, to wait till it goes to Prague and then just back to London. So instead of that, this option automatically detects on which location I am based on the manifest that was predefined in my application. So definitely not a solution for every user of the company, but could be really handy for the traveling manager who needs to print on each site. So when I'm here on my home site, the manifest is put into my application. So an application knows to which server it should communicate on each individual site. And then it automatically checks the network, and based on the network, it automatically knows that when I'm here, it should automatically print to the print server in Prague. And then when I will move to London, the very same situation repeats. The application detects that now it is in a completely different network, so that way I should send the jobs to the hostname or IP address of the server in London. And of course, the last site, last situation, absolutely the same behavior. So whenever you are actually printing always to the local server, and you do not have to care about anything. You do not have to select different Windows printers. You just have one, which is printing locally to your client, and the client is the one that decides where to send your print job. And how does it work? Again, practical demonstration. That one will be pretty quick one. So as you can see, I've just used the icons to demonstrate here how does it work. Each server has a slightly different logo. So I'm on one, I've just disconnected the network or moved to another one, and then when I'm back online communicating with another server, you can see that I'm now connected to server 2 because the application has detected that from the network. Simple as that. And really easy. I don't have to care about anything. I'm just using the same printer. Right, another one, a job owner detection. The very same way as we were detecting the servers, we can also detect the owner of the print job. And again, I will start with some situation examples. First, the most obvious one could be an office without a domain where we cannot really detect who the user is. So that way, when the job will reach the server, it will not be able to detect who's the owner. And that where the application comes in and actually helps that, because the user will authenticate on the app and the server now knows who you are. The other option might be, for example, a public library that offers the printing services to your users. For that, to be able to display and explain this situation, I will just use one more option, and that's the user registration. So let's say there's one kiosk PC shared by many users, and they can use it to either first register and then to send out the print job. So they can use one of the options here. They can send it via email, registration over web, send the job to MyQ, or use an unknown card on the reader. Once the account is created, there comes a situation where the MDC can be used, because when the job is sent again, the client pops up and the user authenticates to be able to print. And of course, as it is a library, it can be combined with a credit accounting, so the user has to top up their credit balance and release the job on the device by paying for every page printed. Simple as that. When it comes to the job owner detection, there are actually two modes how it can operate. And I will first start with the standard mode. Well, we've got three different options of the user detection. As you've probably guessed, that will be a PIN, the username and password, or the selection from the list, which is a special one where you can not only assign the job to yourself, but also to other users. There's also a special one where the device is equipped with a card reader. You can also authenticate by card. Now, as it is intended also for environments without a domain, it also has the Remember Me feature, which is pretty handy in a situation that I'm here for 8 hours and I need to print. And I definitely do not want to put that pin every time one page document needs to be sent to printer. So I will just say, remember me for the next 8 hours, and that way I will not have to authenticate again till I will log out from the computer. And for other installations, there's also one more option which you've already seen through my demonstrations, and that's the Windows single sign-on. So if you don't want to detect the user, but you have the domain, you can use the SSO just to get your user in, so they do not have to bother with logging into application, for example, if they're using the client spooling. There's one more special thing, and that's the idle job security, which means that the system can automatically delete the job that's been hanging there without authentication for some time, ideally for the shared computer. I've just sent a document, forgotten about it, have not authenticated, but if another guy came there and authenticated, he potentially can get access to my job. But if I will set an idle time, the job after some time will automatically be erased from the client. There's actually one more thing, one more special mode how this application can work when it comes to the detection of the user. And that's a very, very special situation when you will have a multi-domain environment, but you will have two users, each from one of the domains, but they will be sharing the same username, the same account name. And for such situation, if your print driver you're using locally is unable to detect from which domain it is coming, you might have a big problem, as these users will be detected as one. Instead of that, you can use the authentication by PIN, password and stuff, but that's annoying. Instead of that, you can just install the client that will be working in the background, and instead of providing us some PIN, password or something, the client will automatically append the domain to the username. So that way the system automatically knows which users is sending which job, and that way that will be two different job repositories, each containing job of each individual user. So the system will really handle them like two completely different users that are not connected in any way. And now for these. I've got actually few videos to share here, videos that are showing the different options for the detection. So starting with the first one. Let's say I would like to authenticate by PIN. I'm printing the job, the client will automatically pop up and I will provide my PIN. I can also use the remember feature, of course, as you can see here, to select that it should remember me for some time. And I will be just sending one job after this one, so I will set it only to a very short period of time. I can, of course, also decide that I don't want to work here anymore, so I can just simply log out. Now, important thing, especially for the shared computer, this Remember Me option can completely be disabled if you do not want it. Second video I've prepared here is an authentication by password, but also it demonstrates the situation where this is a computer shared, a computer used in the company that doesn't really have a domain. So that way, every time the user comes into the office, they have to authenticate, and then to be able to print, they use the client to authenticate through the server. So at the beginning of my shift, I will just come here, click on login, provide my username and password, and tell the client to remember me for the duration of my work day. So let's say 8 hours. And then whatever I will print now will go through the client, and I will not have to authenticate again because it will know that here, me, John Doe, I'm just now connected, and those are my jobs. The third situation, like I said, is a very special mode where you can send the job also to different users. So that way, when I'm printing, a list of users will pop up, and I will just select who I am, and that way assign the job. That way you can, of course, put it into the queue of another user, which has a very special use. The last option I just would like to demonstrate here throughout this webinar is an option to delete the idle job. So like I said, a job that is unwanted, job I have forgotten about. So when I'm printing, and as you can see, there's a very short limit. You can notice that there's been that one job is waiting, and after a few seconds, it will automatically disappear because I have not authenticated. You will see now one job is pending, and after a really ridiculous period of time, it actually disappeared from the queue. Now there's one last mode of the MyQ Desktop Client, and that's the user interaction and a dialog option, which can be used in a case that you would like to apply a print rules, but you do not really want to enforce them. You just want to inform the user that something is happening in the background, and then, for example, they should save the paper or not print in a color if they don't really need to. So every time you print a job, it first goes to the server, but the server has a few lines of a PHP script applied to that queue, so that way it knows it should communicate with the application and put here a very simple dialog, like in this case. So for example, that the job has more than 10 pages, and it's up to the user to decide if the rule should be applied or not. So in this case, to print it in duplex or not. And based on a selection, of course, it's then printed. And that's also pretty much everything about this client. So thank you for watching this. And there's just one more topic I would like to mention, not really related to this webinar. And that's think about the MyQ webinars in general. Because now you've seen a webinar of the MDC of MyQ. But what is coming next, or what we are planning for you, is to prepare a completely new product-oriented webinar series like this. The plan is to have every 10th day of the month, or around it, of course, to make sure it is during the working days, to have a webinar about some selected topic. We will always start with the MyQ news to show you the latest things that appeared as part of a MyQ or its releases, and then followed by the main topic. And the next one of this you can expect in exactly 1 month time on the 10th of March at 3 p.m. And this way, I just would like to encourage you to join us on this webinar. The topic which can be expected will be about the advanced scanning of MyQ X. And now I would like to thank you for sharing your time with us. And also I would like to encourage you, if you have any question about any of the topics I spoke about today, to use the QA session through the icon, which is probably in the top right corner of your screen, and to send us the question, and I will now answer it.